Hello, everybody. So, I'm going to talk today about apologies. The narcissist part of it is just a very kind of small sideline, but it kind of brings the whole thing into perspective because I think most of us have had a narcissist in our lives and a desire for them to apologize. And why can't they seem to do this? Um, it's difficult to know where to start. I'm going to dive into the notes that I made and it will just come together. So, this morning, it was really laid on my heart to apologize to my brother and his wife for three things, actually. And one of them goes back maybe 30 years. The other things go back maybe 5 to 7 years. And so I've been going through this really deep process all morning of what does it mean to apologize and why haven't I done this before? And the key question that has come up for me, the developmental task, has been to move from apologizing out of shame and fear. There's fear of disapproval, there's fear of not being liked, fear of judgment, fear that you are that thing that you have tucked in your head about, oh, I'm that kind of person and they must think that about me. That's all the fear and shame. And that's dysfunction level 1, which is where my mom was at, and then there's dysfunction level 2 or Z, which is full-on narcissism, where there's an incapacity to see that one has committed any wrong, and I'll get into explaining that, but, um or is there contrition? Is there shame or contrition? Shame is, I am flawed, I am bad, and you can't hold on to yourself in an apology that comes out of shame. It's like, "Oh, I'm such a piece of dirt. I don't know how you can stand me." And there's kind of a groveling. And when my mom apologized this way, I felt like there was just something off about it, even as a young person. And it was her way of controlling. If I can take responsibility for this whole thing, then I have the power to fix it. Oh, it's all my fault. Um, Another kind of apology is like, "Oh, I'll just never get this right. I'm just a fuck up. I'm a failure. I'm da da da. I'll never dot dot dot." And that's not really an apology. You're asking for something. You're not giving something. Um, Contrition is about holding on to yourself, acknowledging that you did something that caused pain or that was wrong, taking responsibility for it, and loving yourself through the whole process. It's about being the kind of person you wanna be. It's about caring more for the effect of your omission or commission on another person, caring more about them and the effect that it had on them. So, I'm gonna give a really brief example of a more minor infraction that I committed against a very dear friend quite recently, and then he passed away a week ago, a week and a day. So it's brought all of this into focus. And it's not someone who was very, very close to me, but it's someone that I thought very highly of and cherished. And we kind of drifted apart and hadn't spent much time together. But um, he was 69, heart attack, really sudden, kind of out of the blue. And last September, it was actually August, and I was driving around in my car preparing for this wedding in a constant state of, trying to not be quite so ADD and plan. And I had a handful of invitations in the car that either had to be mailed or hand delivered. And this was a hand delivery because this person didn't have a smartphone, so I couldn't just send him a picture of the invitation. And I remember the moment that I decided not to turn down his street and I just drove on instead. And the excuse I made to myself is, oh, he has this hip replacement. I don't want to force him to walk over all this uneven ground to get to, this wedding site in our backyard. But the truth was, it was just lazy. I think it was just laziness. And it's kind of a habit that I've gotten into. Well, anyway, so he died. His partner comes out from Canada, and It's kind of a complicated situation. I'm not gonna get into it, but anyway, we had spent some time together, the 4 of us, and so we were really able to reconnect with her, and she is not one to mince words. She is like the person that passed away, and she said he felt really bad about how you kind of lost touch. And then I made this big confession to her about not making a greater effort to invite him to the wedding and having deprived him of our experience and deprived others of his presence. And so, because he passed over, I'm able to talk to him on the other side, and because he wasn't really close to me, there's not such a huge grief process that I can't hear him, and so I've actually been having the most fascinating conversation with him over the last week, and this morning, I really got into the whole subject of contrition and shame and apologies. Um, he was just so available for me, and I was like, okay, I made this apology out of a really healthy place of contrition, and then since then, I've kind of fallen into a bucket of shame, and I can't get out of it. I can't figure out what this is about. So he helped me through that, and I remember when I was just full on apologizing to him right after he died of like, "Dude, I'm so sorry I didn't make the effort to get you to our wedding. That would have been really precious to everyone, especially to me, because he'd really seen us through some ups and downs in our relationship and, had been a confidant and a counselor to me, and I was so proud of where we had come to, and anyway, and yeah, we had a meeting towards I don't know, like about a year or 2 ago that was just kinda weird, left us both with, like, a weird taste in our mouths, and we understand the context now and what was going on, but anyway, we're humans and these things happen. So, we're left with regret, and I said to him, "What do you do with regret?" Because it's like an abyss that you just keep diving into. He said, "First, you turn around, stop diving into it, come out of there." Like the old cowboy proverb, what do you do when you find yourself in a hole? Well, number 1, you stop digging. And number 2, he said, grace is the only way out. Grace is the only way to rectify or resolve the intolerable experience of regret. So this was just such a perfect object lesson for me because it wasn't overwhelming, the infraction. The depth of the friendship wasn't so deep that I was just, I've been drowning in it. It's just been just the right level of depth. And I think that has allowed me to I've just made some decisions to stop committing sins of omission. So I am doing the things. I have a dear friend who I assigned the flowers to at my wedding. Dear friend, one of the most longevity, the longest enduring friendship I have in Fort Collins, and her mom died the day after our friend died, and so I finally did it. I just got myself to the frickin' grocery store. I got the flowers. I came home. I created a beautiful bouquet, used one of the vases that had been given to me for the wedding flowers, and got in the car, took it to her house, and she wasn't there, and luckily the back door was open so I could go and set it down, and then I left her a very long I made a recording about some really deep thoughts I was having about her and sent it to her, and I was like, "In lieu of a card, I'm sending you this when you have the bandwidth to listen to this," because now she's in the hospital with her husband because he's not well, so it's like double whammy, right? Um, and I email the people that pop into my head now, and I'm like, "Hey, let's get together." Um, I've just been popping through, and it's been so wonderful. Acts of generosity, it's really giving. And I made a list at the very end of my outline here that the process of recovery, meaning recovering yourself, it's the growth process. It's recovery from addiction, recovery from illusion, recovery from the programs, the programming. We recover ourselves. And when we do that, we can afford to give because we have and we are enough. I am the source of love. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "Tend well your heart, for it is the wellspring of life." Somewhere inside there is the infinite source. And when you find it and you get in touch with it and you create some solid ground for yourself, you can afford to be a grown up and be an adult and show up and give and be responsible. And I am just beginning to do this in ways that I've never done it before. And I'm 57, and that's okay. So the narcissist, why can't they apologize? Well, first of all, they're incapable of feeling shame because it would destroy them. There's nobody home to even bear the experience of shame. Okay, there was my mom who was neurotic, who would take too much responsibility and would feel shame and then would just kind of try to barf it out and like, oh, I'm so unworthy, I'm such a loser, and I find myself having a flavor of that where you're not really, you are apologizing, you're feeling bad about something, but you're kind of wallowing rather than connecting with that person and saying, please tell me about the effect that my actions or inaction had on you, because I'm more interested in that than in how I'm feeling. I care about you, you know. That adult form of contrition is like, I mean, then there's the narcissist example, which I said to someone years and years ago about their narcissist parent when they're really, really struggling with it. I was like, they can't afford to apologize to you because they don't have the resources to realize that they are okay even if they screwed up. There's really no solid sense of self there. Therefore, everything has to be perfect. It's very fragile. And that's why they dump their shame, they dump their failure, they dump their self-doubt. They just pass out all the crap that they can't afford to hold. There's no holding space for this. Partly because if these things were true, they would be unacceptable, unlovable, and they might cease to exist. I think that's kind of the fear in there. I don't think it's just a fear of not being loved. I think it's something more fundamental. Maybe I don't exist. It's just kind of a guess but we all have a little bit of that narcissist inside us that makes it difficult to accept responsibility for how we've screwed up because we're afraid that it means something about us that we can't bear. But okay, I've been listening to Evan Hodkins, and if you've never heard of him, look it up. It's not Hodgkins, it's Hodkins, Evan Hodkins, EVAN, modern mystic. Absolutely. You'll find a bunch of playlists on YouTube, just absolutely brilliant. And he's talking about the Celtic teaching of the goddess and that, the Celtic design, if you can imagine it in your head, it's a three-pronged pattern. Here, I'll do it for you, kind of try to do a more elegant version of it. Oh, I did that wrong. Okay. Twisty, 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 twisty. It's like this. They have kind of this they teach in triads. 3 is a sacred number, and they're saying he was talking about binary thinking. We have a binary world. The mind is binary. And when you're in that, you're locked in that shame of, I fucked up, I hurt somebody. It's kind of like, it feels binary. Either I was wrong or they were wrong, or either I'm worthy or unworthy. And the goddess comes in with the third element. And this is growth. It's like you're stuck between two things. Maybe it's doubt about an old belief. I thought it was this way, but there's a crisis because I'm seeing something else now. And then the goddess, the third element comes in, and it's like, what about this? It's like both and thinking. And in this case, love entered in and said, you are beloved, you are worthy, even though, yes, you fucked up. So specifically what I did is when my sister-in-law first married my brother and they lived in Denver, she came out from Michigan. Wonderful, wonderful couple, absolutely wonderful person. Just impeccable people. We had Tim perform we had him perform our wedding ceremony. Sorry, my husband just left me a note. And I she said something like, "Oh, somebody said, but you don't have any friends out there." And she said, "Yes, I do. I have Paula." She just kind of chirped that out one day and just, in this good faith, sweet, almost like this old fashioned 50s, the new sister in law, you're my friend, And my skin crawled and I had this deep sense of retraction, which I understand now was shame. It's like on an unconscious level, I was like, first of all, I'm ADD and I will disappoint you. I can't be counted on. I don't feel worthy of being your friend. And I think we're way too different. And it's like all these things were going on that just, I dropped the ball. I was in Fort Collins, she was in Denver, and I should have called her every couple of months and said, let's go out for lunch, you know? And decades ago, we could have had a foundational, I could have started something that I didn't. And the second thing, so I sent them this very long email and I said, I've been just going through this list of, things are popping up that I know I need to do. I need to be a person of action now. And you guys are next on my list. So here's apology number one. Apology number two was when my mom had dementia. They moved her from Lakewood to their downtown high rise building so that they could take care of her. They bit off a lot. And I was a struggling single mother at the time and, self employed and always just desperate and afraid. And I said, "Well, I think I should be compensated for my time for coming down." Mom got to the place where she couldn't be left alone or for not for very long, and so we were taking it in shifts, and, as the burden grew, the need for me to come down there and do my part increased, and I said, "I think that I should be paid because I can't work during that time that you're asking me to take care of mom, so." And it was incredibly selfish of me, and I'm sickened at myself. I see why I did it, but I apologized to them for that. I was like, "That was incredibly, selfish." My mom was in the process of leaving, and I was that selfish and short-sighted, and I know that rubbed her the wrong way in a big way. I could feel it, and I just let this kind of roil around like my mom passed away like 6 to 8 years ago, at this point. The third thing I apologized for was when she was moved to a care home, I neglected going to visit because I was like, well, there's just no point. Well, I read a story this morning in Guideposts about someone whose dear friend had dementia and they stopped going to visit and then had cause to begin visiting again. And I just realized there was value in it, and I was too selfish because I was like, "Well, there's really nothing in it for me." And here I was claiming to be a psychic, and I could have gone down and spent time with her, and so I just really got in touch with these very selfish, self-absorbed things that I had done and apologized, and then I sent it to my daughter as well and included an apology to her for some other things, and then afterwards just had this huge heaving, emotional release, and then fell into shame. And I've just been rolling around thinking about this. And so, anyway, I was like, get on your own side and experience the truth of why you haven't apologized until now. These shameful things that we do when we get inside our own story and we say, well, this is why I did this. This is what was going on for me at the moment. These were the mistakes in my thinking. The number one mistake in our thinking when we do heinous things is that we don't realize that we're loved. It comes down to that. And I thought the most important thing you can teach your child, because I was like, my mom never really gave me this example of here's a healthy apology. This is healthy contrition. My dad did. I take full responsibility for this. Tell me what happened, and I'm sorry, and please forgive me. I love you, and thank you for bringing this to my attention. And she wasn't capable of that, really, kind of a little bit more towards the end, but so whenever I would try to confess something, she would make excuses. Oh, well, you just really, you this and you that. And I never got this message that it's like, yeah, you fucked up, be a responsible human being, and here's how you apologize, take responsibility, and move on. So, the 4 things that came to me of what we should be teaching our children is number 1, you're loved. You're unconditionally loved. Like that feeling you have when you look at your dog and you think they're just so freaking adorable. You can't not love them, and sometimes when they do naughty things, it just makes you laugh because you love them so much. That's how we're loved. Also teach your children, number 2, you're fallible. You're not the golden child. You're capable of screwing up and hurting people's feelings. Yeah, we all are. It's not unusual. It's not a cause for shame. It's not a cause to stop loving you. You screw up sometimes. Number 3, you're capable. You're strong. You have the capacity to take responsibility. And the 4th one that came to me is you belong to yourself. So can I enter in to this apology with a total sense of I am not inferior or superior. I love and cherish myself. I am a whole human being, and I need to clear this up with these people. I accept responsibility for what I did, and I still belong to myself. I am not even subject to what you think about me or what you think of that event or how you frame it in your mind. Given the kind of people that they have an excellent, impeccable moral compass, and I have every reason to believe this is going to resolve just beautifully. But sometimes, like when you have to apologize to somebody who doesn't have a good moral compass, or they're just like kind of an asshole, and you're like, I need to apologize to them for this. You don't give them the power to tell you who you are. You don't give that person the power to inform you about your worthiness. So the situation with them is a little trickier because I think they have an excellent moral compass. Anyway, I was walking along and I was talking to George. He's like, "Come on, come on." He's like, I could feel him doing his counseling thing with me, and he was like, I said, "Well, they're more, I was thinking of my other brother that doesn't have a good moral compass, and I don't care what he thinks. That's not a problem. But they have a better moral compass." And he said, "Why?" I was like, "It's even better than mine." And he's like, "Why is it better?" And then all of a sudden it came to me because they were told that they were loved. They were able to get the message from a very early age very consistently. You're loved, you're safe, you're worthy, you're an individual, you belong to yourself. I see great things for you. There were just a few fundamentals that I just wham, I just knew in my heart. He got those things and I didn't. And at a real key point in my development, I experienced the trauma of sexual abuse. I hope that doesn't get edited out or a strike for that. But anyway, that had a big effect. I mean, there was a bath in which it happened about who I was in the context of the family, and then that happened, and then it got repressed, and then I was even less safe. I kind of absorbed into my mom. But anyway, to get back to this whole apology, contrition versus shame. Yeah, the narcissist wants to give you their shame or failure or unworthiness because they don't have room for it. Um, okay, I'm just going to look over my notes to see where I'm at with all this. Feel free to leave a comment. I might have mentioned this before, but this is an Evan Hodkins principle of when you have an A versus B inside you, there's some kind of conflict. And sometimes we have these and we don't even know what they are, but it's this feeling of tension. And if you ask yourself, what are these two voices saying? This could be true or this could be true. A part of me thinks this, a part of me thinks that. And they're usually very polarized. And the goddess comes in that moment with a third option, and you arrive at a new level of growth. Okay. I had another wonderful example of contrition versus shame. I have a friend that I consider her to be a real adult. Her planetary ruler is a spade, and I'm like, oh, she's a grown up. Like, I do not feel like a grown up to myself. She feels like a grown up to me. And I was struggling with making an apology. It's like I knew this needed to happen. I knew I had dropped the ball on something, but I was just rolling around in shame and didn't know how to just apologize because I couldn't afford to. I didn't have that the ground built out under me that says you can screw up and still be loved, still be worthy of love. So anyway, she just used these words. What I tell people is, "Hey, I really dropped the ball about such and such, and I'm really sorry." And it wasn't the words, it was the delivery. It was her container where I could picture her saying that and holding on to herself. And that was kind of the beginning of me being like, "Oh, there's something in me that has found apologies extremely difficult," and it's something I harangue Stuart about. It's like, "If you would just apologize in a real healthy, normal way to me, chances are you've manifested a partner who is very much like yourself with similar limitations and problems." And most everything I complain about with him is true of me. Most everything, not everything, but that one is a big one. It's like, okay, I need this kind of apology from you. Maybe I need that kind of apology from myself. Maybe I need to give that kind of apology where I care more about the person who I hurt than myself. Um, yeah, shame. We care too much about their opinion of us. And with me kind of being back in a shame bucket, it's like I have to find a ground of self compassion. And when you recover more pieces of yourself, you have more to give, right? There's a wellspring of abundance within you, and you get to hold on to that. You get to protect that, even in the context of apologizing for something and accepting responsibility. You're like, you don't get to have me. You don't get to decide my punishment, for example, or why I did this, or anything about me. You will have your thoughts. We all have our thoughts, right? We're all welcome to them, but I'm not subject to what they think and what they believe. I'm subject to what I think and what I believe. Way more. So I get to hold on to myself. I'm still trying to get a grip on this. So it's like I'm not quite nailing it. But anyway, there were 4 deer in the front yard. I'll end with this. There were 4 deer in the front yard this morning, right after I had, or was it before? I think it was after I wrote this long email, read it to my husband, sobbed, got ready, walked out the front door, and there they are. And then I went back inside, had to do some other things, and then I went back and I couldn't see them, and then I saw that they had all gone into the shadow, where there was a shadow. The trees were making a shadow, and there were 2 males and 2 females, kinda like my brother and his wife and Stuart and I, but it was a balance of masculine and feminine, and I was like, "Oh, the medicine for the deer is that it's okay to get lost. It's okay to get lost in your shadow. Paula, you're safe. You might wander into your shadow today, and you're okay." In sins of omission and commission, the masculine and feminine. And then my dear friend Jess said to me, deer is protection to me. So the way I see that totem is that you're being protected in that space that you're exploring your shadow. So it's I'm just going to end up by saying, it's messy being human. It's binary. Sometimes we do a really impeccable job with something where it's perfect. Sometimes we really do. And sometimes, most of the time, it's a mixed bag. And so here is the third answer. It's like contrition or shame. I've set up a binary system. I have to do all contrition. I have to be healthy. I have to figure this out. And it's like George showed up at one point during my internal conversation and shed such profound heavenly love light on me that I was like, this is the third option. And I'm looking at the little brochure from his funeral in his face, and he's just smiling at me. And hearing him say, you got it. So thank you for listening. God bless.